My name is Ava, and I still remember the exact night my life changed, as if it is frozen in time. I was 18 years old, living in a small white house at 24, Maple Street in a quiet city in Europe. Our house had a narrow hallway, wooden floors that creaked at night, and a kitchen window that looked out onto a small garden. It wasn't perfect, but it was home. My father, Daniel, believed in discipline more than anything else, and my mother, Clara, cared deeply about what others thought of us. And then there was my younger sister, Emily, the one who always seemed to get away with everything. That evening started like any other. I was in my room upstairs, sitting on my bed with a small envelope in my hands. Inside it was all the money I had managed to save, about $120. It wasn't much, but to me, it meant something. I used to sit there and imagine a different life, maybe in America, where I could start fresh and no one would judge me based on what they thought they knew. I was lost in those thoughts when I suddenly heard my name being shouted from downstairs. Sophia, my mother's voice cut through the house, sharp and loud. I rushed out of my room, my heart already starting to beat faster. As I came down the stairs, I saw Emily standing in the living room, crying loudly, her face red and her hands shaking. My father stood beside her, his expression hard, while my mother looked at me like she had already decided something. "She took it," Emily said, pointing directly at me. I stopped halfway across the room. "Took what?" I asked, completely confused. "My money," Emily cried. "Pound 300. I left it in my room, and now it's gone." She was upstairs the whole time. I felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. "I didn't take anything," I said, my voice shaking, but trying to stay calm. My father stepped forward. "Don't lie, Sophia." "I'm not lying," I said quickly. "I was in my room the whole time. I didn't even go into her room." But Emily kept crying harder, and somehow, that mattered more than anything I said. My mother didn't even ask me a single question. She just looked at me with disappointment, as if I had already confessed. "Pack your things," she said coldly. I blinked, not understanding. "What?" "You heard me," she replied. "We will not tolerate this in our house." I looked at my father, hoping, just hoping, he would say something different. But he didn't. He simply turned away. In that moment, I realized something I had never understood before. It didn't matter what I said. They had already made their decision. And just like that, without proof, without questions, without even giving me a chance to defend myself, my own family chose to believe I was a thief. That night, I walked out of the house with a small bag in my hand and $120 in my pocket, and I didn't look back. I thought maybe someone would call my name, maybe my mother would open the door and say they made a mistake, maybe my father would stop me before I reached the end of Maple Street. But no one did. The door stayed closed, and the house that once felt like mine became just another building behind me. The air was colder than I expected. I pulled my jacket tighter around me and kept walking without any clear direction. The streets were quiet, with only a few streetlights flickering above. I had never felt so alone before. Every step I took made it more real. I had nowhere to go. After walking for what felt like hours, I found myself standing in front of an old bus station near the edge of the city. The building looked worn out, with cracked walls and dim lights that barely lit the entrance. A few people were sitting inside, some with bags, others just staring into space. It wasn't a place anyone would choose to stay, but for me, it was the only option. I walked in slowly and chose a seat in the corner, holding my bag tightly against me. I didn't trust anyone, and I didn't feel safe, but I was too tired to keep moving. There was a large clock on the wall above the ticket counter, and I kept staring at it, watching the seconds pass. Time felt strange that night, too slow and too fast at the same time. I didn't sleep properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my family again, Emily crying, my father's angry face, my mother's cold voice telling me to leave. I kept replaying it over and over, wondering what I could have done differently. But no matter how many times I thought about it, the answer stayed the same: nothing. By morning, I felt exhausted and numb. My back hurt from sitting all night, and my eyes burned from lack of sleep. I checked my pocket again, just to be sure, $120. That was all I had. I walked to a small shop inside the station and bought a sandwich and a bottle of water for $3. I ate slowly, trying to make it last, knowing I didn't have the luxury to waste money. The first few days were the hardest. I stayed at the bus station, sleeping on the same bench every night. During the day, I walked around the city looking for any kind of work. I went into small cafes, shops, and markets, asking if they needed help. Most people didn't even listen. Some just shook their heads before I could finish speaking. But eventually, someone gave me a chance. It was a small cafe owned by a man named Lucas. He didn't ask too many questions, which I appreciated. He just looked at me and said, "Can you clean tables and wash dishes?" "Yes," I answered immediately. "Then you can start today." That was it. No contract, no promises. At the end of the day, he handed me $10 in cash. It wasn't much, but to me, it meant survival. I thanked him more than once, and he just nodded like it was nothing. From that day on, I did whatever I could. I worked at the cafe when Lucas needed me, and on other days, I helped carry boxes at a nearby store or cleaned floors in exchange for a few dollars. Some days I earned $15, some days nothing at all. But I saved every single dollar. I stopped thinking about comfort or rest. My only goal was to get through each day. After about 2 weeks, I started to understand something important. No one was coming to help me. I had to rely on myself for everything. That realization was painful, but it also made me stronger in a way I didn't expect. The bus station slowly became familiar to me. I recognized the faces of people who came and went. Some were travelers, others were like me, people who had nowhere else to go. I learned how to keep my bag close, how to stay alert, and how to sleep lightly without losing my things. But I knew I couldn't stay there forever. After a month of working and saving, I finally had enough money to move somewhere, even if it wasn't much. I found a tiny room above an old shop not far from the city center. The owner, a quiet woman named Margaret, agreed to rent it to me for $200 a month. The room was small, with a single bed, a wooden chair, and a window that barely opened. The walls were plain, and the floor felt cold, but to me, it felt like a step forward. The first night I slept there, I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. It was the first time in weeks that I felt even a little safe. There were no loud announcements, no footsteps around me, no fear of someone taking my things while I slept. But even then, I couldn't relax completely. Something inside me had changed. I stopped trusting people easily. I stopped expecting kindness. And most of all, I stopped believing that my family would ever come looking for me. I learned how to survive, how to stay quiet, and how to depend on no one but myself. And even though I was still standing, still breathing, and still moving forward, I knew deep down that I was no longer the same Sophia who had once dreamed about a better life. 2 months passed, and in that time, I built a life that felt small but steady. My room above the shop became my world. Every morning, I woke up early, got dressed in the same few clothes I owned, and went out to work. I still worked at Lucas's cafe whenever he needed me, wiping tables, washing dishes, and sometimes even serving customers when it got busy. He never asked about my past, and I never offered to tell him. That silent understanding made things easier. I learned how to stretch every dollar. I kept track of my money carefully, how much I earned, how much I spent, and how much I could save. Some days, I allowed myself something small, like a warm drink for $2, just to remind myself that I was still human. But most of the time, I lived simply. The room I rented for $200 a month wasn't comfortable, but it was safe, and that mattered more than anything. Even though I had started to adjust to this new life, there were moments when everything came back to me. I would see a family sitting together in the cafe, laughing and talking, and I would feel something tight in my chest. I tried to ignore it, but it was always there, a quiet reminder of what I had lost. Then one afternoon, everything shifted again. I had just finished my shift at the cafe when my phone buzzed. I didn't receive many messages, so I looked at it immediately. When I saw the name on the screen, my heart skipped. It was my mother. For a moment, I just stared at it, unsure if I should open it or not. My hands felt cold, and my thoughts started racing. After everything that had happened, After the way they had thrown me out without even listening to me, why would she message me now? I finally opened it. There is a family barbecue this weekend. You should come. That was all it said. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement of what they had done to me. I read the message again, hoping I had missed something, but I hadn't. It felt strange, almost unreal. As if those 2 months of pain, confusion, and struggle meant nothing to them. I put my phone away and walked home slowly. My mind was full of questions. Why now? Did they finally realize the truth? Or did they just expect me to show up like nothing had happened? That night, I couldn't sleep properly. I kept thinking about the house, about my parents, and even about Emily. Part of me was angry, and another part just wanted answers. I wanted to know why they had believed her so easily. I wanted to hear them say they were wrong. By morning, I had made my decision. I would go. Not because I missed them, and not because I forgave them, but because I needed closure. I needed to see things for myself. The barbecue was held at my grandfather's house. His place was larger than ours, with a wide backyard filled with green grass and old wooden furniture. I remembered visiting him as a child, running around that same garden without a care in the world. But this time felt different. When I arrived, I paused at the entrance for a moment. I could hear laughter and voices from inside. It felt like stepping into a life that no longer belonged to me. I walked in slowly. Almost immediately, I felt the stares. Conversations softened, and a few people looked at me with quiet curiosity, while others avoided eye contact completely. It was clear that everyone knew what had happened, or at least, what they had been told. I kept my expression neutral and moved toward the side of the garden, trying not to draw attention. I picked up a cup of juice from the table just to have something in my hands, even though I had no intention of drinking it. Then I saw her. Emily stood near the center, laughing with a couple of relatives, looking completely relaxed. There was no guilt on her face, no sign that anything had ever happened. It was as if those 2 months had only affected me. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief rise inside me, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to create a scene. Not yet. I stood at a distance, watching, listening. That's when I heard it. Emily leaned closer to one of her friends and spoke in a lower voice, but I was close enough to catch every word. She actually came, she said, letting out a small laugh. Her friend smiled. What did you expect? Emily shrugged. I don't know. Maybe she thought they'd take her back or something. My grip tightened around the cup. Then she said something that made everything stop. It was so easy, she added casually. I just blamed her and hid the money in my drawer. For a second, I thought I had heard wrong. But I hadn't. My heart started pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. My chest felt tight, and my thoughts froze. The truth, so simple, so clear, was right there, spoken like it meant nothing. All the nights I spent at the bus station. All the days I struggled to survive. All of it, because of a lie. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, trying to process what I had just heard. And then, before I could say anything, another voice came from behind her, calm, steady, and unexpected. Well, the voice said, that's very interesting. The moment that voice spoke, everything seemed to freeze around me. Conversations faded, laughter stopped, and even the light breeze in the garden felt like it had disappeared. I slowly lifted my eyes, already knowing something important was about to happen. Standing just behind Emily was my grandfather, George. He looked calm, but there was something firm in his expression that I hadn't seen before. In his hand, he held a small black device. At first, I didn't understand what it was, but the way he held it made it clear it mattered. Emily turned around, her smile fading the second she saw him. Grandpa. I didn't see you there, she said nervously. I noticed, he replied quietly. Everyone nearby had gone silent now. My parents were standing a few steps away, watching with confused expressions. My father, Daniel, frowned slightly. What's going on? He asked. My grandfather didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked directly at Emily, his eyes steady. You said something just now, he said. Would you like to repeat it? Emily shook her head quickly. I didn't mean anything. We were just joking. But it was too late. The calm in my grandfather's voice made it clear that he already knew more than she thought. Then he lifted the small device in his hand. I think this will help us understand better. My heart skipped. Understand what? My mother, Clara, asked, her voice uncertain. Grandfather pressed a button, and the small screen lit up. I installed security cameras in the hallway of my house, he said. A few weeks ago, after I noticed small things going missing. There was a murmur among the relatives. I could feel my hands starting to tremble, but I didn't move. I couldn't. My father stepped closer. What are you trying to say? Instead of answering, my grandfather turned the screen so everyone could see. And then, the truth appeared. The footage showed Emily walking quietly down the hallway. She looked around before stepping into my room. A few minutes later, she came out, holding something in her hand. Then the video cut to another clip, Emily entering her own room and hiding the money inside a drawer. Clear. Simple. Undeniable. No one spoke. The silence felt heavy, like it was pressing down on all of us. Emily's face turned pale. Her eyes widened as she stared at the screen. I can explain, she said, her voice shaking now. Explain what? My father asked, his tone completely different from before. For the first time, he didn't sound angry at me. He sounded disappointed. I didn't think it would go this far, Emily said quickly. I needed the money, and I knew they'd believe me if I blamed her. Her words hit harder than I expected. Even now, even when caught, she spoke as if it had all been something small. My mother covered her mouth, her eyes filling with shock. You lied, she whispered. You let us throw her out, over a lie. Emily didn't answer. My father ran a hand through his hair, pacing slightly as if trying to process everything. Then, slowly, he turned toward me. That was the moment I had imagined so many times. But now that it was real, it didn't feel the way I thought it would. He started, but his voice broke. Sophia, I didn't know. I looked at him, really looked this time. The same man who had told me to leave without asking a single question now stood there, unsure of what to say. My mother stepped forward. We're sorry, she said softly. We should have listened to you. We should have asked. Her voice trembled, but it didn't change anything. Because I remembered everything. I remembered standing in the living room, trying to defend myself while no one believed me. I remembered walking out of the house alone. I remembered the cold bench at the bus station, the hunger, the fear, the silence. All of it came back in that moment. You didn't even ask me, I said quietly. No one had an answer for that. The truth was standing right in front of them now, but it had come too late. My grandfather looked at me, his expression softer than before. There was no judgment in his eyes, only understanding. He gave me a small nod, like he was telling me that what I felt was valid. And for the first time that day, I felt steady. I'm not coming back, I said. My mother's eyes widened slightly. Sophia, please. No, I interrupted gently, but firmly. I needed you to trust me. You didn't. My father looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I learned how to survive without this family, I continued. And I won't forget that. There was nothing else to say. I placed the untouched cup of juice on the table beside me and turned around. No one tried to stop me this time. Maybe they knew they had already lost that chance. As I walked away from the garden, the voices behind me remained quiet. The air outside felt different, lighter somehow. I didn't know exactly what my future would look like. I didn't have everything figured out. But I had something more important now. I had myself. And this time, that was enough.